We'll call the Design Review Board meeting to order Wednesday, November 2nd. Nate, do you want to do roll call?
Sure. Hoppy.
Here.
Gallion. Here. Bilk.
Here.
Zwolenski.
Here.
McDowell.
Here.
Okay. Looks like, did everybody get a chance to read the minutes from last month? Are there any corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. Chad Krosky, retail apartment rental. What you got for us, Nate?
All right. Chad did call me. He was running late. He said if we need him, we can call him. But he is. So they renovated the upstairs of that building, right next door here.
Can't wait to see it because it was very cool before.
It was.
It was an awesome space.
They've done a lot of work in there. But so it'll be like an Airbnb short-term rental suite, sorry. The upstairs portion only, and they'd like to put a sign on it. It's an 8 foot by 1 foot 4. It's a 10.7 square foot projecting sign. It says suite at Jackson, or suite on Jackson. Stick out perpendicular. It's black and white sign.
I think it looks nice.
I think it looks very unthought out. You're not gonna be able to see the sign from the west because you got a window sticking out.
How far out does it?
I don't know if I have that. They had sent me a couple different.
Are they staying at 1 foot 4 because that's staying within the square footage, or?
12 square feet is the limit,
Okay.
so that, you couldn't go to a whole lot more without being up against that. See if I can find that.
I think it looks more appropriate if you were doing a new apartment complex and you have some temporary signs saying now leasing. That's what it reminds me of. I don't think it's appropriate for bed and breakfast, verbo, whatever you wanna call it.
You don't think the sign's appropriate for that?
I think it's good that at least when you were going there for the Airbnb, you would know where it's at. Otherwise, I
Yeah.
think you would have a very hard time figuring out where you're supposed to be
Right.
going.
I was looking, like, the sign reminds me of that steak place in downtown, City Square,
Oh, City Square, yeah.
because that's the way their sign is.
The hotel also has a sign like that.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
What color is it going to be?
Black with white lettering.
Would you have a recommendation on something else that they should do, or?
Where's the entrance at?
I'm sorry.
Where's the entrance to this? You're not coming through the store, I'm sure.
I honestly don't know.
I thought they
Probably.
were building a new one in the store.
There was talk about that, but I don't know
Yeah.
for sure.
I don't know.
I think whoever said it, as far as if you're renting it, if you've gotten it as an Airbnb, you've been given the instructions on where to go and where to enter. That's like, oh, okay, it's
Oh, there it
here.
is.
So now I know what the building, and now I know where to look for the key.
Yeah.
Or for the future. You know, maybe they're in town, say, oh, whatever, we could get a
Right.
lease.
He could really make it stick out as far as he needs to, right? I mean, if it was
Yeah,
black
there
and-
wouldn't be any issues there.
Yeah. It
Couldn't-
looks like it.
Couldn't extend onto the right of way, but
right.
you could stick it out further to be more visible. I looked, I don't have a dimension on the arms, just on the side.
He's gonna light it at all?
No.
Okay.
Well, nothing was shown.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept it with, and he couldn't make it any bigger, cause that 8 feet, I mean, he's probably, it's not that much to get it within that 12 feet.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a whole lot.
I think he did it probably as big as he could possibly do it to get to right where he was still within
Which is also
Right.
very nice, that he's
Yes,
actually
that he's-
taking into consideration.
the rules,
the-
yes.
The rules.
Absolutely.
To John's point, though, you could recommend that he makes the arms wider.
Longer.
He has the clearance there.
Right,
That won't be an issue. I mean, if he put it out, I don't even, it looked on the one drawing, if the sign's 1'4", it looked like maybe the brackets are a foot, somewhere
That's-
around
Yeah,
there.
it looked like the
Even
brackets were
another
pretty big.
6, 8 inches would get it that much further out, that you get a little more visibility maybe.
Well, who's in the apartments where the window's at, it's gonna be blocked, I mean, I wouldn't be happy looking out my window, looking at that sign every day either.
Well, it's up above, I mean, it's up pretty high on that
I guess it
window.
is.
Says you're allowed to be up to 6 feet off the building.
Right.
It also
Furthest projection, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I've
Also
stayed
s-
at the Hotel Millersburg up in the top, and I've never thought about, oh, that signage is keeping me from the view. You can see really well from up there in those rooms that overlook Jackson Street. It's pretty cool to stay.
What's the square footage that's permitted?
12 is the maximum.
So I saw in the minutes, and I apologize, I missed the last meeting, but I did see in the minutes that there was mention made about this committee.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You're on that
and
committee.
I'm on that committee. I am.
Yeah, yeah.
So, we've met, what now, twice, I think? And we're trying to make some headway, and maybe now's an appropriate time just to bring you all up to date, because so far we haven't made a ton of progress. The goal has been, I think the initial goal, if you agree, Nate, was to try to marry up, reconcile the document to another supporting document that HDM had drafted 2009, I think it was. So we're working on that, trying to make sure that these documents are they're okay with each other, they mirror each other. So far, we've spent a ton of time just talking about process, about how this board functions. I mean, should we talk about this now?
Ken, I mean, we do have a motion on,
Well,
on the
we can-
sign, but
There's no second, we can,
So, you know, and you'll hear more about this because we're just, again, in the early phases of this, but one thing that struck me about our group and about these meetings is that we've all been given these binders, and when we talk about process, and I'm guilty of this as well, because I was shocked to find out when I started looking back at this document that I came on this board in 2009. Been on this board for a long time. But we don't get these out at these meetings. And one of our recommendations to this group is going to be that we have this document with us at every meeting for this very reason. Because when you read this document and become reacquainted with it, I mean, there's some gravity to this document. There's a lot of rules in here, there's a lot of regulations. And the way this board basically has functioned is that, just like we're doing tonight, and I'm not saying it's been the wrong thing to do, but we look to Nate and we say, is this okay? Does this meet the requirements? Well, Nate, you know, is usually right and says, yes, it does, and, you know, we take a look at it and we vote yes or no. The committee kind of thinks, A, that's been unfair to Nate. That's putting a lot of responsibility on Nate to follow everything, and mistakes can happen that way. And secondly, we should be familiar in looking at the document. So this is the first time in a long time I actually brought the document and I have it. So I see here there's a whole section on signs like this about how they can be mounted, how far out they can go. It says sign area shall include the face of all the display area, both sides, it says. So that would be double the square footage that we're talking. That's what the regulation says.
double-sided signs, if they're more than 12 inches, both sides count towards the total in our code.
Okay,
If they're under that, they don't.
okay. Where a sign has 2 or more display faces, the area of all faces of the sign shall be included in determining the area of the sign, unless the 2 display faces join back to back, so that's your point. So anyway, that's our first thing, is that we're going to recommend that we all need to look at this document before we make a decision on these signs. And not simply look to Nate for a yay or nay. Second thing, this has been a personal pet peeve of mine, is that the committee, I think, agreed with me. I don't like voting on these things when the applicant's not here. It's almost semi-offensive to me that the thing gets submitted, we get a handout, we're supposed to look at it, we have questions about it, some of the things that you've just raised. The applicant's not here to answer the questions. So one, I think, other recommendation the committee seems to be on the same page is that if the applicant doesn't show, we don't rule on it. If you don't care enough to come to the meeting and get the approval for your sign, then come back the next time. That'll be another one of our recommendations. So that's just a couple of things. I mean, what else was there, Nate, while we're on this topic?
Color palette,
Color palette.
clarifying the code and the design guidelines kind of contradict themselves as to whether paint needs to be approved or not.
Yep.
Color choice. One says we don't, one says I do it, and then in another place it says all, how does it word it, all changes.
Yeah.
It's a little vague, but the interpretation could be made that paint is changing the building, the appearance of the building.
That's the way the committee feels, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, so this one over here that was painted, we feel should have come to the design review board, because if you read this like we did, it seems to me that it addresses color.
Well, I know if you go to places like Hudson, you can't apply a paintbrush to the building until it's
Exactly.
approved.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's my biggest pet peeve has been that people have they've begged for forgiveness,
That's been a
or
big
they've asked
part.
for forgiveness
After
instead of
the
begging.
fact.
Instead
Well,
of
the
begging
county's
for
done
permission.
that. The
And-
county's done that.
And that's a real challenge, and then you have,
It puts you as a board in a bad spot because
It
they've
does.
invested a lot of
It
time
does.
and money into something
And-
already.
I mean, the 2 signs that I think the hotel signs were tabled for 2 meetings, and then the 3rd meeting, I was not here, and they all got approved. And they were all the same signs, and so it's just frustrating because they're huge. They've got to be above the.
Oh, they're way beyond.
They're way
They're so
beyond
far
the
beyond. They had to
limitations.
go to planning and zoning.
Yeah, and the Troyer chocolate, that one has got to be way over the signage. And, you know,
So-
that was the one when I drove through town, I think I sent an email out and I said, whoa, when did that get approved?
But the code says that if it's inside the building, we don't have anything we can say about it.
Planning and zoning does.
Yes.
So that has been, the 2 points that you
Okay.
just mentioned has been topics of some significant conversation, trust me, because I agree with you on the enforcement piece.
Right,
None of us here have, we don't like if somebody comes after the fact, or they don't come at all. You mentioned the hotel, we asked for approval for the signs on facing Jackson Street, or Clay Street, excuse me, that were supposed to be redone. They redid one of them. They never did the other 2. So there's another thing, there's all kinds of non-compliance, and we've been talking about enforcement a lot. Part of that then that you touched on is the second topic, which is there seems to be a lack of cohesiveness between this group and planning and zoning. Because you're right, the chocolate sign is a great example. We look at the color, we look at how the sign is drawn up, it looks like a dripping bar of chocolate, blah, blah, blah. We think, okay, that looks pretty good, you know, we'll approve that at the size requirements. We walk out the door and leave, and then it comes to planning and zoning, and I don't know what their thought process was. They have their own board, they can make their own decision. Next thing you know, it covers the whole window.
Are you,
And people come back and say, well, why did the design review board approve that? And my response is, listen, we did not approve that. We approved it at this,
Right.
and now it's this. So somehow we need to bridge those two committees.
Right, because both of those signs have brought questions to me by citizens and
Yeah.
saying, are you guys approving these signs?
Right.
when you guys look at the Troy chocolate one, does it look like it's the whole window because the blind is down?
No, it looks
No,
like.
it's almost
the-
the
It
whole
really
window.
looks like the whole window,
It looks like the
yeah,
whole
it
window,
does
I
look
think.
like the whole window.
So, the only reason I'm mentioning that tonight is that he's not here. I appreciate the fact that he'll call, but still,
And he called me at like 4 o'clock, said,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna make it.
okay,
I'm available by phone. He was planning to be here,
okay.
which is not the normal. Usually we don't get any. We tell them you need to be here and never hear
Right.
from them until they call the next day wanting to know if they were approved or not.
Yeah,
So I'll give him some credit on that.
yeah.
How do we bridge that with the planning and zoning as far as, I mean, if it's signage, why does it go to them and why isn't it why couldn't that portion of it become,
All
Are-
variant, anything over square footage requires a variance. They're the only board that approves variance.
that does variance?
Yeah. It's
Had a lot
zoning
of
appeal.
conversation about that, about potentially trying to combine it into one board, about trying to change how that's ruled upon, or meeting simultaneously, so we're all having the same conversation about the same
discussion.
sign at the same time.
Yeah,
So I don't know ultimately what we'll recommend to
I
council.
think that's a good idea,
But-
those are
but-
good ideas,
Yeah, we've gotta bridge that somehow.
yeah.
We've got to fix that.
I'll tell you, I've sat on planning and zoning too, so my vote yes for the hotel and for Troyer's, although maybe I'm seeing it at a different time, but when it looks like the full window to me, she does have a blind in there that she closes, and it's the exact same color as the sign, so maybe there's something there, but to me it was about the fact that those buildings maintain so much frontage because they wrap around a corner. And we did it with Miller's Creamery, which signage looks very nice in my opinion, but that's way over.
I think the signage needs to be,
The
and this
chamber.
is
The
where the
chamber
hotel, I
Is
mean,
the biggest one. I mean, the chamber has more signage than anybody.
Yep.
And
right. And it's the size of the building, because, you have a little bitty one that gets the same size sign
Correct.
as the
It's
big
huge.
one. It's almost like it should be proportional.
That was
Because,
part of my reasoning. It's
Yeah.
like, wait a second, you have this Kaufman building, right, what
Uh-huh.
Dylan has purchased that's now 3 buildings, and he gets the same amount of signage as the front of Jackpot Pottery. I mean,
Right.
I think we approved a variance for him that was recommended by this board.
Well, and one of the things we talked about with the hotel was, if we allow the hotel this much signage, then why do we even have a board? What are we even here for? Because,
Exactly.
because,
You've set
I
the
mean,
precedent.
we've
Right.
set the precedent that anything goes, you can have whatever you want. And so when people come here now with a 10.7 foot sign, now how are we to say no when they're actually trying to abide by the rules that we have placed?
right.
And that makes it
It's
difficult.
kind of tough too, because
agree.
the hotel, if they put an active business in every one of those that face Clay Street, they get the 12 square foot per business, right?
32 total.
32 total per business.
yeah.
So when you think about that, all of those were individual suites
Right.
at one point in time, and still could
That
be.
was their argument.
Yeah,
There
that
is
was
a
their
lot of
argument.
signage that could go in that
That was
building.
a horrible argument.
I
That
know.
way, yes, it was a horrible.
I
know.
have to
Tried
say,
it.
I think I've been on this board from the very beginning, and the only signage that has ever been turned down was when the Piggy Market had all of those cardstock signs in the
Yeah.
windows, and we made them take that down. That was the only enforcement that I think this board has ever done. So, I do think that he's followed the guidelines.
Yes.
I do struggle with telling him no, or telling him, no, because you weren't here when that hasn't been in place, the process hasn't been that he has to be here. And he's followed the process that we have right now. And I think for the spirit of the sign, it's not about, I don't know that it's about marketing the sign, because marketing the building for that, because people will, if they want to visit Holmes County, they're going to either choose to go find a hotel or search on Airbnb. And that's where the marketing is going to go. It's finding it once you're here. And I think that's probably what the spirit of the building is finding it. So.
I mean, I do agree with you, we have let people get by without being here, I'm just saying that on a go-forward
Right.
basis.
Yeah.
And you know, you talked about how long you've been on here, and I mentioned I've been on here. I mean, that's another recommendation we're gonna make, is we're gonna start to limit terms on this
Oh, well,
board.
my term's limited at the end of this year.
Mine
so
is
I'm
too,
done.
I've decided the same way, I mean, we need
I'm done.
fresh,
And I
we
think
need
that's
fresh
good.
faces.
We
need
do.
to.
We
need
do, and we
fresh
have,
faces.
I know in the past that evidently there's been a problem with getting people, but the last time we had openings for this board, we had 5 applications. So it's not for lack of people who want to be involved,
Yeah.
and because of that,
You don't want the big signs.
and because of that, I think you're right, and it is a good idea, but it is good that we have the guidelines, that we all have them, that we all know what they are,
Right.
you know, and
And
so.
we follow them.
Right.
So, you know, to your decision on planning and zoning, I mean, we've all made decisions here, we think it's the right thing, and, you know, we're not perfect, right? But the other thing the committee, I think, recognizes, and this is, I think, valid, is that it's hard to say no to some of these businesses, right? Because we want businesses in the buildings, we want a healthy downtown, so if it comes down to, it's on the edge, which way are you gonna go? Well, you're probably going to go pro-business.
Yeah.
Because we want the business.
Right.
And we recognize that.
Yeah. And that's what I have an issue with when I come in here is I'm not buying their sign.
Right.
I'm not putting money into this sign. I'm not buying their awnings. I'm not putting money down for all of that.
Right.
So who am I to say, no, you need to change it to what I want it to be, because they're the ones investing in their own business.
That's back to the enforcement issue, Kelly, and you're
Right.
exactly right. So we have had instances where they've come and the sign's already done.
Right.
Yes,
And I mean,
right.
that is,
To ask them to redo it and spend all the money again. I mean,
Right.
but it's not fair to us.
Right.
And not fair to everybody else who follows
It's-
the rules.
it's part
Right.
of the process is that
Yeah.
if you start a business, you're not going, hey, I'm gonna order the sign tomorrow. You're putting some thought into it.
Right.
Right.
And hopefully you've got some designers and whatnot helping you with the building and helping you with different things. And you're not turning the key the very next day.
Right.
So the very first thing that I think needs to happen is when somebody comes and is looking at putting a business in Millersburg, they need to come to the village offices and
I
say,
was just gonna say that was another big
that's the,
point of
you know, come to the
discussion,
village.
getting
This-
everything out to these
Yeah,
right.
new
Letting
owners,
them
new
know.
tenants.
Right.
This is the process you need to go through.
And plus two, they need to know, you could say, plus, if you come to the village, any of your improvements could be community reinvestment area,
yeah.
and you could get a tax deduction. But
Right.
if you don't come and get it from the very beginning,
Then you're out of luck.
then you're out of luck.
Is there going to be an enforcement standard? Is there going to be a, you know?
That's what we'll come back to council with, because that's really council's call, and, you know,
Yeah.
Bob Hines is, it seems to me there should be.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
should be. There should
Yeah.
be something we can do, or a fine, or something that,
There are fines in the ordinances, and I was thinking about this since our last meetings. We have gone, there's obviously been violations over the years. If anybody that completely thumbed their nose at us, we turn over to Bob. There's a few specific ones I'm thinking of, and he's been able to strongly encourage them to comply, or the next step is we start the penalties. So we've gotten close. Remember the discussion? I couldn't remember how far we've ever taken it really.
Mm-hmm.
That's my best recollection, thinking through some files, that he was able to get some resolution
Okay,
out of all of them that I can think of.
okay,
There's one that went to court,
okay.
a retaining wall. years ago.
Yes, I know about that.
You know about that one. There was another lawsuit the village wasn't directly involved in when Walmart came in. There's a huge sign file with Walmart, Wendy's, and
I vaguely remember that.
there was another Dana Lewis,
Yeah.
Investment Realty Properties, when he owned the opposite side of the intersection there.
Right.
There's a big settlement there. So it has happened at times, but I think the approach has always been do everything we can to avoid. And I think that's where we want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think we
that's
want
a
to get
great
a
point.
reputation as
That's a great point.
comply or leave.
Right.
Right,
We want to
right.
be pro-business,
We wanna
but we
grow.
want to encourage
I hope.
them. That's what I had somebody call me about a building downtown and said, you know, what do I need to do? I said, well, you need to go to the village offices
Yeah.
and find out what you can do.
Right.
You guys
And you have to look up, you can find all of the codes and ordinances online. Look it up.
Yep.
I mean, you're exactly right. So often it's about communication and how you position it. The committee's not going to come back and recommend that we really be hard asses about this or
Right.
anti-business.
Yeah.
But the rules were set up, the idea behind historic downtown Millsburg as it's been presented to me was to make the town look nice and welcoming. And if it looks that way, then theoretically as a business, you should attract more people and make more money. So the way it should be positioned, at least the way we think, is you go to the business owner and say, listen, this is for everybody's good. We're not trying to be heavy-handed here. There's a reason these rules are in place. Town looks nice, should increase your business. You know, don't go doing something crazy or try to skirt the rules and don't think that we're not going to enforce it. But at the end of the day, we're trying to do it because it's good for you.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right, so on this sign,
That's great.
I mean, this particular sign, I don't have any issues. What
I
about
don't have
you?
any issues with the sign at this point, but I just want, and again, this board has nothing to say about this, but I've got into this before on other projects, other places. When you're converting an apartment to an Airbnb or a Verbo or whatever, you're changing from a permanent resident to a transient resident, and those are different rules. I don't know if anybody's ever looked at that or not, but you know, there are code violations if you're going from a private rental to a
Okay.
transient rental.
Well, you're talking like ECOBA involvement.
Right.
Okay.
Because you're going from an R to an R2 or an R3, depending on how your egress is.
Okay.
Okay. A man that has beat his head against the wall on more than one of these.
I'm sure.
So,
I'll second your motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
nay. Yeah, I don't like it.
Okay.
I don't want us to look like Gatlinburg.
What would you rather look, what would you rather?
Berlin.
No. Not the town, the sign. What do you want him to do to the sign?
I just don't think we need a sign that big for something like that. I mean, I understand the hotel more than I do this,
Yeah.
so.
See, that's what this board, in my opinion, can't do either. If the code is written that way and it's an option for an owner to do that, that's not fair to that owner
Right.
either. I
Right.
mean, here we have somebody who's complying with our rules
Right.
completely.
Right.
You didn't find anything in the review that was wrong with the sign.
No.
No.
And remember,
Right.
we don't rule on size.
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
So we rule on.
Well, you
how-
recommend
we
on
recommend
size,
it.
right?
Yeah.
There is a recommendation that goes to the planning and zoning from this committee on the size
Right.
variances.
But if it's underneath the rules, then it's in
Then
compliance.
it's good.
Yes.
It's in compliance
That's
with the
correct.
rule.
Correct.
I mean, this one is.
Okay.
Okay.
Next meeting, if this be the first Wednesday of November, if we need it.
December.
Oh, December.
December.
Oh,
December.
December.
Oh my goodness.
December, oh wow.
Let's hope
That'll
it's
be
60
my
degrees.
last meeting.
You might have to be in a different location.
We're gonna adjourn by mutual consent.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.